Hello everyone, welcome to Dnyanadeep. In this session, we are going to discuss on UPSC Geography Optional PYQs. This is a question from 2023 paper. I'll read the question which is saying evidences from paleomagnetism and seafloor spreading have validated that continents and ocean basins have never been stationary. Fine. Elucidate with suitable diagrams. Now, if you look at the 2023 paper, I would say that 2023 paper was fairly a basic paper, right? And this is again a very static type of question, a very basic question, I would say. And though these basic, very static questions look very simple, very easy, they are the most challenging questions. Why they are most challenging question? Because these static questions, they demand a very specific answer, right? So if there is a dynamic question, there is some space of your interpretation, your analysis, the examples, whatever you have to collate and you can present it then and there itself. But when it comes to a static question, your preparation needs to be very thorough, very to the point, and also your answer needs to be equally to the point, right? You cannot write a lot of crap and you cannot miss very crucial points. So that is something, a challenge which comes with the static question. So here I am trying to address what should be ideally written in this particular part. First and foremost, which topic of the syllabus this particular question deals with, that is something I have given. So continental drift, isostasy, plate tectonics, it is the topic from our syllabus. Broadly we categorize this particular part as tectonic geomorphology as it is related to the crustal surface of the earth, right? So in tectonic geomorphology, I'll just give you a brief context and what this particular question is demanding you to write. That is something I'll put it in here. So right from continental drift to plate tectonic, we see that there is an evolution around or evolution regarding the movement of the crustal surface of the earth, right? So with the continental drift theory, be it F.B. Taylor or Alfred Wegener, they proposed their opinion, they came up with their answers regarding mountain building, so on and so forth. At the same time, this particular solution or this particular hypothesis which was presented in continental drift could not be proved with enough evidences. So that was a challenge which was faced in continental drift theory. Gradually, it led to the development of plate tectonic theory in 1960s. And even in plate tectonic theory, what we find, what is the single largest challenge? The single largest challenge was to prove that plates have moved or the crustal surface of the earth. Here, in other language, it has been said that is continents and ocean basins. They have moved across the geological history of the earth, right? And to prove that, what we have, the most concrete evidence we have, which tells us that the continents and ocean basins have moved, is nothing but paleomagnetism and seafloor spreading. Fine. So that is something the outline of this particular question is, and we have to prove this particular part. Now in introduction, what can be written, let us understand. Again, when it comes to introduction of optional, okay, so typically when we are dealing with an introduction of optional, it's a challenge. Why it's a challenge? Because in GS you have a luxury to write any definition or to write any fact. Fine. Now in optional also you can write any definition or fact. But again, if you are dealing with a very technical part of the subject, defining right at the beginning is not going to give you a head start. So what is expected when we are writing optional introduction? It is expected that you are quoting some scientists, right? So this is something which is expected. You are quoting some theory, that is one more expectation, or you are going to give some evolutionary perspective, or I would say a historical perspective. Fine. In GS, it is not possible to give your historical perspective, or it is not even necessary because that will become a very technical answer in that particular sense, right? But when you are writing a geography optional or be it any optional answer, it is more it is more appreciated if you write scientists, if you write theories, or if you give a historical perspective. So what I am going to try, or I am going to do, I will go for a historical perspective, because historical perspective in tectonic geomorphology is very interesting. Typically in the case of continental drift and plate tectonics, whatever has happened in last 100 years, that has been amazing. Fine. So once in 1912 we have continental drift, which was discarded maybe for a good number of 40 years, and the very believers or the very non-believers of continental drift theory ultimately ended up believing in that particular movement of continental crust, right? So that kind of interesting theory, or that kind of historical perspective we have in this particular context. And that is why what I am going to say, that in tectonic geomorphology it has evolved from continental drift of, again, write details, say continental drift theory of F.B. Taylor in 1908 to Alfred Wegener 1912 to plate tectonics, right? And also write that initially there was disbelief regarding the movement of continental crust or the movement of crustal surface of the earth, which was ultimately proved with the help of what? Ultimately proved with the help of paleomagnetism and seafloor spreading. Fine. So that is something, introduction I am going to provide, because these paleomagnetism and seafloor spreading gave me credible evidences regarding the movement of crustal surface of the earth. Fine. So this is my introduction. Now moving on to the body part. Now I am assuming, right? So certainly I am not going to discuss each and every single part in detail. I am not going to write each and every single part of the answer, but I'll just tell you what all we are supposed to do in this particular question, and what are the nuances, what are the details which need to be mentioned in this particular part. Fine. So in part 1, the body, I am divided in 3 parts. Now you would be wondering why I have divided in 3 parts, because if I look back to question, I have paleomagnetism, fine, and I have seafloor spreading. These are the only 2 parts which are visible. But what I am going to do in this particular case, I'll have first part, which is going to set again a context for my answer, in which I am going to briefly explain plate tectonics. I'll say that we have plate tectonics theory with the contribution of Tuzo, Wilson, Morgan, so on and so forth. Fine. All of them collected pieces, right? Again, you can write about paving stone hypothesis. Okay. So with the help of paving stone hypothesis, we conclude a theory such as plate tectonic theory, or you can write how Lee, Pitcher, Morgan and all, they came up and collected all the pieces of puzzle and presented plate tectonic theory. We suggested that there is a movement, there is something called as plate. The crustal surface of the earth is divided into plates, and these plates are in a constant motion. So that is a brief introduction of plate tectonic theory. Now to support this plate tectonic theory, what do we have? We have in part 2. Now I am going to move to part 2. Once I have briefly talked about plate tectonic theory, mentioned all the contributions and contributors of plate tectonic theory, I am moving on to the next part, that is the part played by Harry Hess, where he suggested sea floor spreading hypothesis, right? He came up with his own opinion, his own idea, what is happening at the divergent boundaries. He suggested that along the divergent boundaries, what do we have? We have a sea floor which is spreading on both of the sides, right? So that is something Harry Hess suggested. You have to elaborate what this sea floor spreading is. Also draw a diagram. Now just draw a diagram for first part where you will show plate tectonics. Then also draw a diagram for second part where you are going to talk about sea floor spreading. Elaborate exactly what sea floor spreading is, in what all areas of the world we are finding sea floor spreading happening. And finally, I'll go on to Wine, Matthew and Morley's hypothesis, right? What was Wine, Matthews and Morley's hypothesis? They came up with validation of seafloor spreading with the help of paleomagnetism. So that is where I am going to explain what this paleomagnetism is, right? Explain that how paleomagnetism evolved or what paleomagnetism exactly suggests. Again, I have a diagram to show that. Fine. So I have alternate bands of reverse polarity. If I see this particular band, this has a specific polarity. Look at these bands, they have a different polarity. Look at this, again similar, so on and so forth. So I have bands with different polarity, different magnetic properties. And with the help of this paleomagnetic property, what Wynne-Matthews and more or less suggested, they suggested that the seafloor spreading is an actual phenomenon. They validated the idea of seafloor spreading, which was suggested by Harry Hess, right? So that is how you are supposed to construct your answer. Now it may happen that you are not able to draw such a colorful diagram. Obviously in exam hall you cannot draw this diagram. Draw this diagram, a very simplistic one, right? So you are showing these bands, alternate magnetic bands. Fine. Now moving on, what other diagram you are supposed to draw? The other diagram which needs to be drawn is that of plate tectonics. You have to show the movement of plates, you have to show subduction zone, you have to show the divergence, and ultimately you also have to draw one more diagram, that is of seafloor spreading. So that is how you are supposed to address this particular question, which was fairly a static question. Good score can be achieved in this particular question, provided you are mentioning all the details. Here what was most important, because everyone knows what is seafloor spreading and what is paleomagnetism, right? What will add value to your answer? Writing names of the people, writing work of the people, and how all this process went on. That is something is going to add value to your answer. Fine. So that was expected in this particular question. In conclusion, I'll just put a very generic conclusion. So combined evidences, they presented a conclusive proof towards the movement of plates and plate tectonic theory. So that is how I would conclude. See you again in next session. Till then, have a good time.